Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Comfortably Zone Radio Network. My name is Alan Blumkin, and with my co-host David Finoli, and we're doing session 3 of the Pittsburgh Sports. Today we're going to be discussing the Pitt-Penn State rivalry, which goes quite a ways back. Welcome, David.
Well, hi, Al. How you doing?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Good. I suppose you weren't doing okay last week when Pitt was blowing a 21-0 lead.
No, not quite. I mean, I was amazed that they blew it, and then it took just a couple of minutes in the overtime for them to win. But beating a team like that by 7 is in overtime is not exactly the greatest feat of all time.
Not at all. I do think Coach Narduzzi goes in there with the thought process he doesn't want to show, at least the last 2 years, doesn't want to show Penn State anything in the films, and he really almost got caught blowing that game doing that. I was there for until midway in the third quarter when I had to leave to go to work, and he was just physically beating Youngstown State, and I'm not quite sure why they didn't keep the pedal on the metal there, but Youngstown State's not your normal FCS school, and I think that was a grave mistake not to try to open it up a little bit and kind of go for the throat in that first game. But regardless, we got Pitt Penn State this year, Al, which certainly, especially when you were going to Pitt, had to be on the top of
that was always
top of your calendar.
That was always the final game, and the only time I saw them beat, the first year I was there, was 1960. The Pitt was 4-3-3. They played 3-7-7 ties that year, and they lost 2 games up until the Penn State game. The 2 losses were by 1 point to Oklahoma and 1 point to UCLA. I mean, the team only allowed 77 points the whole year. The offense was the problem.
Right.
And Pitt lost to Penn State at the Pitt Stadium 14-3.
Right.
Absolutely. And then the only time I think I saw them beat them was in 1963 when the game was postponed 2 weeks by the Kennedy assassination, and I think Pitt, that they played that game when it was scheduled, would have plastered them. But Pitt only came away with a 1 or 2 point win, if I remember correctly.
That was a classic 22-21 victory. What do you remember some of the highlights of that? That certainly, as you mentioned before, memorable because of the assassination of JFK and the game being moved back a week. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, what were some of your memories of that day?
It's faded quite a bit, but I remember Freddie Mazurek was the quarterback, and Paul Martha and Rick Leeson, I believe, were the running backs. And Pitt was able to, when I was covering for the Pitt News back then, Pitt was able to punt better than they usually did because, I pointed out the punting was a weak area in one of my articles in the Pitt News. And they played well, but that was an exceptional team that year. And as I said just a moment ago, I think if that game, their momentum was so strong that if they played them on the regular scheduled date, that they would have beaten them soundly. And I think that was the last time they beat them for a while because Pitt went really, really downhill the rest of that decade.
Well, yeah, they only. I believe won one more in that a couple of years later. I want to say 65 they won, but then Joe Paterno came to town and
it was up against Dave Hart.
Yeah. Well, it certainly was a bit of a mismatch. He came to town in 66 and just dominated Pitt thoroughly until 1975. None of the games were even close up until that point. Do you remember that 75 game when Carson Long missed?
Oh, wow, yeah, that was very painful. That was very painful. I went with some friends out to Penn State in 1973. It's the only time I've ever been there because it's really in the middle of nowhere. And that was Tony Dorsett's freshman year. And Pitt gave them a fight until they couldn't make a 7-play goal line stand because on the first series from there, their Pitt was called for some, bogus penalty. And it gave Penn State a new set of downs. And Penn State went in off the new set of downs, and then the game, the pitchers couldn't come back from it. But the 75 with Carson Long, that was it was the first time in years I really thought that they had a chance to beat them. I was watching it on TV with a few of my Pitt friends, and Long, I believe, missed two or three chippy field goals and an extra point. Any of which extra point would have tied, and any one of the field goals would have won it.
And this was from a guy who ended up the next year being the all-time NCAA scoring leader for kickers, and certainly at that point one of the most accurate kickers Pitt had ever had. But that day, on one end, certainly had to have been his worst experience kicking, but on the other end, to me, that was the day that Pitt showed, hey, maybe we belong as a rated team, and maybe we finally turned the corner, because Penn State, not just the way, or the amount of times Penn State lost under Joe Paterno, but just the way he beat them. And they were the better team that night, as I recall.
Yeah, but, to come so close and to lose because of kicker. I have one particular friend of mine. He hates all kickers.
So he was a fan of Carson Long that night.
Yeah, he goes crazy when those teams lose games because of. If you're kicking a 40-yard or 50-yard, that's something. But a chip shot, basically was inexcusable, and then. In '76, they finally beat them when the year that they went unbeaten, and they won the national championship.
Oh, that was a classic game that night. That was actually my first Penn State Pitt game that I ever attended, and it looked early on that somehow Paterno was going to find a way to beat Pitt. Getting out to a quick 7-0 lead, and then it was tied at 7 at the half. And as I recall, at that point, Johnny Majors made one of the great coaching moves of his life, putting Dorsett in fullback, and they absolutely just pounded Penn State in the second half, winning 24-7. In what, to me, even though they won the national championship a month later against Georgia, that to me was the greatest win under Johnny Majors.
Also, I think it was that season. When Dorsett rushed for 300 yards against Notre Dame.
That was 75. That was the year
75,
before.
excuse me, yeah.
Yeah. But actually, that's a good point, Al. In the 76 opener against Notre Dame had come down, taken a quick lead on Pitt, and I don't know if you recall, Dorsett took the first play from scrimmage of the season and ran 61 yards.
Yeah.
And they ended up winning that game handily, 31-10 over another bitter rival. But that game against Notre Dame in '75, where he did run for over 300 yards. He also caught quite a few passes. I want to say he had close to 400 yards of total offense that day, and that was just a stunner. That was a stunner. That was a good Notre Dame team that came to Pitt that day.
The 77 on paper promised to be a tremendous season also. And Kavanaugh broke, I think they played Notre Dame in the opener. And Kavanaugh busted his hand on a helmet during the game. And Yeah, that made that series, that season pretty mediocre.
It was. They ended up crushing Clemson.
Yeah.
In the Gator Bowl at the end. Kavanaugh had probably his greatest game. Well, the Duke game was probably his greatest game. His first start in '76, where he threw for over 300 yards on 14 completions. But yeah, you're right. That destroyed what, and that team might have been a little stronger than '76 going into it. It was certainly deeper.
Yeah, just like I think the. I might be a minority on this one, but I think the '72 Pirates are better than the '71 Pirates.
Well, I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, and they wound up losing and going in the ninth inning of the final LCS game.
Yeah.
And another Penn State game that stands out to me was when Pitt, I think, was unbeaten in 1980, or one of the years that Marino was there.
That was 81. Yeah, I know where you're going with that one.
Yeah, and they got crushed by Penn State. They couldn't stop them.
Yeah. Oh, Pitt went up 14-0, and Marino was driving to make it 21-0. I was in that end zone that day, and as he was driving down through the interception, I went back for a score. And you're right, Penn State nailed 41 more points for a 48-14, just a devastating win.
That was sitting there in total shock. When did they stop playing each other? You're more up on this than I am.
Oh, they stopped playing each other consistently. Looks like 93. Came back, played for a few years in 97, and then ended the series in 2000. Some say it was because Joe Pa was bitter that Pitt never joined his Eastern Conference in the 80s, his proposed Eastern Conference. What do you think towards those lines?
Well, from what I understand, I know Paterno did this with Syracuse. I don't know if he did this with Pitt. That he wanted 2 home games for every one on the road.
Well, yeah, he did suggest if they wanted the game to go on, that was part of the agreement.
Now that's ridiculous. So Penn State basically, when they joined the Big Ten, to make it the Big 11.
Yeah.
That's some of these conferences that call themselves with numbers. The numbers are totally outdated because there's either more or less number of teams in them. You have the Big 14, the Big 12 is 10, the Atlantic 10 I think is 14 also.
Yes, they are. They are.
And they don't change their names. But anyway, when Penn State left, they broke off relations not only with Pitt, but they broke off with West Virginia. They used to play every year. Syracuse, they used to play every year. And all the teams that they played regularly, on a yearly basis, they basically broke off totally with them, just like West Virginia has done since they went to the Big 12.
Right, and I mean, on one end, I can see the thought process of you have 3 or 4 non-conference games. One's going to be against a lightweight to get you a win, and I understand that there's limited access to who you can play. But I thought when Joe Pa ended the series, it was more out of spite. I mean, this was special. This in the I'm sure it was before, but in the 70s and 80s, this was the premier, or one of the premier rivalry games of the year that everybody waited for.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there were just absolute classics. You talked about the 77 game. I don't know if you remember that in the snow, where Pitt was unable to pull off a tie. Penn State won 15-13. I want to say they scored late and missed a 2-point, if I'm not mistaken. But I mean, there were just some classic games, and it just was a shame it didn't go on. To me, and again, a Penn State fan, or I'm a Pitt fan, but I always thought that was a spiteful thing he did, and something that just meant a lot to people in this area, which unfortunately with the new, I mean, you've had a couple generations go by since they really played consistently, and you've lost that flair for it. just doesn't seem like it's the same to the generations that have come since as it was before.
No, I mean, the other two games I look forward to every year with Syracuse, where they still play because Syracuse and Pitt have a very, very close athletic relationship.
Right.
They used to play them twice. In the old days, they used to play them twice a year. And when they were both independents, they would play them twice a year in basketball. One at Pitt, one at Syracuse. They played Syracuse. They stopped the Syracuse winning streak at 16 games in 1960 after Syracuse had won the 1959 national title. They stopped at 10-0. That game was at Pitt Stadium. I saw that. And the other one at Pitt, of course, had the backyard brawl with West Virginia.
Yeah.
And when Pitt beat the West Virginia, was a huge underdog a few years ago, and they beat the West Virginia down there 13-7.
Yeah.
You know, me and my
that was a classic
game. We went crazy.
Yeah. Well, just a classic game. And you're right. I mean, it's sad to see so many of those rivalries go. I mean, you wonder had Joe Pa's Eastern League come to fruition in the 80s, whether it would still have the strength to have survived what's happened in college football since. Although I will say for what Pitt did, it made sense at the time because being an independent was more advantageous and more lucrative if you were a top independent with the way college football was set up back then than joining a league. And they also had the benefit of joining the Big East, which there's never been a better conference in basketball since or before or since as strong a conference as the Big East was when Pitt had joined it. So I thought for them it was the right move to do. But you do wonder had they joined the All East team whether that would be a thing now and how strong it would have been.
Are they scheduled to play after this year, or is that going on hold again?
They play next year, if I'm not mistaken, and then I think it goes on hold at that point for a while, and then they pick up West Virginia for a couple of years.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, I think West Virginia big in the Big 12, which has 10. I think that geographically the closest school to West Virginia is Iowa State.
Yeah, no, it's certainly it's got to be tough for them in there. Unfortunately, that was their lone choice, or else, I mean, if you remain part of the old Big East in football, I mean, your program is dead. So,
well, basically, what constitutes the Big East now are all basketball schools. I mean, Villanova and Georgetown play football, but it's on a lot lower level.
Oh yeah. No, it certainly it is what it is. I mean, it's a tough basketball conference now, and that's what it was intended to be when it started. I think it's called the All American Football Conference that unfortunately Connecticut is stuck in. I mean those schools had to remain in there, which if Pitt, I assume if they weren't accepted by the ACC, that would have been their destiny.
Yeah, from what I understand, BC was the one who blackballed Connecticut because of the New England market.
Right, exactly.
When BC defected from the Big East to the ACC, it was a real shock to a lot of people because BC was one of the founders of the Big East.
Right.
And it is what it is. Pitt had a pretty good basketball team for a number of years, and now they're up against Duke and North Carolina, and some of these others at the Virginia, some of these other ones that they can't literally compete with.
No, it becomes difficult, but with the new AD in there, I mean, she seems like she has a grasp of what it's going to take to make them competitive overall in the ACC. I think I mean, right now there really isn't any teams you can look at and except for wrestling and say, Pitt is one of the top echelon teams in the ACC. So it's going to be a quite a challenge. They made the investment into men's soccer, seemingly made the investment into football also.
The point spread, I still look at those because I stopped betting years ago. It was, of course, giving me, as they say in Italian, agita. And I got so worked up after a game whether I won or lost if it was close. I couldn't, come down for a couple of hours because you invest so much, and it's nothing you can control either. So anyway, Penn State, according to the point spreads in the newspaper, is 21 points over Pitt. Now, Penn State had a workout against Akron last Saturday.
Right.
I think they beat them something like 52-0.
Oh, they were dominant. Barkley was dominant.
Baylor. Baylor.
Well, I mean, you look at this team, and on paper, it looks like it could be a mismatch. I mean, the Pitt defense is young. The linebackers look confused. I mean, Youngstown State throws the same play out of the backfield. I believe at one point it was 7 times for over 200 yards passing. Just a simple running back out of the backfield, the tight end out of the backfield. I mean, if the linebackers don't improve, I understand they probably weren't showing many blitz packages against YSU, but if they don't get pressure on the Penn State quarterback, this could be a long day.
Yeah, I've always been of the belief that no matter how good the defensive backs are, if there's no pass rush, it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And especially, I mean, in the day of Mel Blount, before they changed the rule because of him, defensive backs might be able to control a receiver a little better. But now with the way the rules are, there's no way they can. The best can't. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback, and I mean, if Pitt gets no pressure on this kid, it could be a long day. I mean, Max Brown didn't look bad, but we still don't know what we have in him.
Well, Pitt's defense last year was no bargain. I mean, they gave up 49 to Penn State. I mean, they beat them because of the offense.
Right.
Yeah, they played North Carolina, and they wound up leading the whole way until the last play. Right. 37. There was no defense against Oklahoma State. There was no defense against Syracuse. And the Clemson game, they won on a buzzer beater field goal.
Although I will give them credit, in the fourth quarter, the defense in that game probably played their best quarter of football. But again, they weren't consistent for the whole game.
No, that Syracuse game was like a basketball game.
Oh God, I was there.
In fact,
I'm laughing my ass off the whole game because it got to the point where it was ridiculous.
Yeah, every time Syracuse closed 1-7, Pitt would make it 14 in about 3 minutes. And when I told somebody in particular the score of that game, he asked me if it was basketball.
Exactly. Well, yeah. I think if I'm not mistaken, they actually the football game outscored the first Pitt-Syracuse basketball game last
Probably. But I remember watching that on TV last year, and that was, boy, God. I mean, the only, I once watched a pro game when the Giants in 1966 won 12-1, where they lost the game to the Redskins 72-41. It reminded me somewhat of that game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, but on the good end, Pitt had some firepower, and I will say the one advantage they have, and I'm sure my friends at Penn State will think otherwise. I think Narduzzi is a superior coach to Franklin. I mean, Franklin has all the support in the world and gets the kids, and I give him a lot of credit for what he did there under adverse circumstances, and to have the ghost of Joe Pa at your back, it means insane people, just bypassing what I felt was certainly a sin, what he did, allowing that to happen on campus. And with that pressure behind him from some of the alumni, that's got to be a tough situation for him.
Oh, yeah.
It was certainly a tough situation for Tom O'Brien, and from what I can gather, the reason he ended up leaving. But I mean, I give him a ton of credit for what he put together under those circumstances. But I still think that Narduzzi is a better coach. He just doesn't have the firepower that Penn State has behind him.
Well, he seems to have stabilized it somewhat because, I mean, they were changing coaches every other year.
Oh, yeah.
Forever.
There was some poor leadership in the athletic department at that point. I mean, I really, really like the woman they hired from Eastern Michigan.
That'd be better than that clown that they had that went to Oregon State and in his 1 year, of course, the Pitt basketball program.
Destroyed the basketball program.
Destroyed it, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you're on target with that, and you know, that's certainly going to make a good show for us as college basketball appears, because that is a mess right there. It's either going to be the most interesting season I've ever seen, because it's like an expansion team is what it is.
Yeah.
Or it's going to just be devastating.
Well, the bottom feeder in the ACC basketball last year was BC, and Pitt even went up there and beat them handily. And if Pitt sinks to that level, that's going to be pretty bad when they have to face Duke and North Carolina, Miami, all those teams. I mean, it's just not going to be fun.
No, it's the fortunate thing about basketball, it's a quicker fix than football.
Oh yeah,
with only 5 guys on the floor, you get a couple, and I mean, I think a lot of Stallings as a coach. I know he did some questionable things last year, but from what I've seen in the past, I think a lot of him as a coach, and I on one end, I'm excited to see what he's going to do under these circumstances. But on the other end, man, you just get mad that Scott Barnes did what he did in such a almost a clueless way of just firing a coach with nothing, no background or no plans, seemingly no plans to replace him. I think they thought that the program was seen in a better fashion than what it was, and quickly found out there weren't top-notch coaches lining up to get the job.
No, that's true, because basically it's people won't really know until they start the league play, unless they're in one of these first month 2-day tournaments, because essentially the major teams during the late November and December schedule what I call cupcake games.
Yes, absolutely, necessary to make sure you have enough wins to be considered for a tournament, which is a little bit of a shame that has to happen. But
Jamie Dixon last year took TCU, which has absolutely no basketball history that was any good, and he won the NIT, which of course is way secondary to the NCAA, but he got them to play at their capabilities, which he always did with, for the most part, with the Pitt teams.
Right. I mean, hopefully he'll be able to recruit down there. I mean, I never knew that was his strength up here. He always had some strong guys doing it. Barry Rorson for one, but seems when those guys left, that seemed to be something that they were unable to replace on his staff.
Yeah, he had a pipeline here, and he got some decent players out of New York and New Jersey over the years. And it was fun. I mean the 1 year that they made the NCAA Eastern Regional Final, and they were beaten in the last second by Villanova. Was the height of it, but it was always exciting.
Yeah, no, they did good. I mean, it, as I said, it's certainly. I mean, the forecasters aren't looking good for Pitt basketball this year, but I mean, they're you don't know. I mean, it's just you have no idea what this team's going to be able to accomplish without any background on most of these players, and the returning guys aren't exactly top-notch. They're top-notch players from last year.
I know, yeah. They lost some to graduation and eligibility, whichever comes first.
Right.
A few of them transferred out.
Transfers. Yeah. I did find out that there is two more Pitt Penn State games. There will be one, of course, next year at Pines Field, and then 2019 will be the last one at State College, and that will be the 100th matchup of the two schools. Will be the last one that we know of for a while.
They must have started something, in something like 1909 and 1910.
The first one was actually 1893.
Wow.
Penn State dominated them early. In my book on Pitt football during the Jock Sutherland days, when Pitt ruled the gridiron, the one thing I remembered from researching those days is not just that, Pitt was by far the dominant team at that point, but they always played on Thanksgiving Day until Penn State decided they didn't want to come down here on Thanksgiving anymore because of the weather, which to me, the Pittsburgh weather is nowhere near as bad as State College weather can be.
Well, as I said before, State College is in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
And there's
nothing. I've been up to two Pitt Penn State games up there in '79 and '80. Had to park in a Powcaster, go down a one-lane road to the parking lots, and I'll tell you what, Pitt beat Penn State both those games, and it was just a pure joy to see. At the time, 70,000 people. They weren't anywhere near the capacity they are now, but see them sitting on their hands and being quiet as that you could hear a pin drop. Pitt won those two games.
Yeah, I went up twice in the early '80s to Syracuse to see them play. And first time was in the old Archbold Stadium, which was so old and decrepit that they had those the toilets were those power potties or whatever they call them.
Oh, okay.
You lock them, you go in, you lock it, and half the world is in. You just used it.
Oh, okay.
And then the next time I went up there was to the Syracuse Carrier Dome, and which was a very nice facility, but you've got to park very far away, and you have to take a shuttle bus there from the parking lot.
Oh man,
so you're stuck there. You're stuck there. If the game is lousy, you're stuck there the whole time because these things don't operate until after the game ends.
I did not realize that. I've
Maybe they changed it.
I was traveling through Syracuse, but I've never been to a game there.
No, we used to go. We used to go when I'm 74 now. We were a lot younger. I saw Pitt play at Army. I saw them play a couple of times at Navy. I saw them in College Park, Maryland. I saw them play Temple one year at the Vet. Anytime they were in the, anything from, Boston down to Baltimore, we would, Baltimore, Washington, we would get a group and we'd go to the games.
Did you get a chance to see them at Yankee Stadium last year?
No, I've got mobility problems.
Okay,
I'm on a walker. It's a long story. I've been at this for a couple of years. I had 3 back surgeries a few years ago.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
And anyway, I think one of the things that happened last year is that they have a very good regular season, and they wind up coming here.
Yeah.
Which 30 degrees instead of going somewhere where it's relatively warm.
Right. And as I recall, they lost their quarterback and they lost Connor in that game.
Yeah.
The quarterback in what to me was one of the bad cheap shots I've seen in a football game. But
he's stuck with Buffalo, with the Buffalo Bills team.
But he's the
backup. And the regular quarterback there is coming off concussion protocol. So if he can't go, pay him Well, they're facing the Jets Sunday, which means you can probably put a good high school team on the field against the Jets and probably beat them.
Absolutely. We'll be looking to them to see if they could tie the Lions record.
Yeah. But I have a few friends who are diehard Jet fans. I said, I told them, haven't you suffered enough yet with them? God.
Well, hopefully we won't be suffering Saturday, and
and then they got
forward to seeing what hopefully will be an exciting game.
Yeah, then they get Oklahoma State the following week. That's no bargain either, and that game last year was stopped by lightning for a while, and Pitt was trading touchdowns with them until they wound up losing the game by 7 at the end.
Absolutely. They had the ball driving, and then unfortunately turned it over, but they were in a position to win that game.
Yeah, things are looking up. But one year they were playing Cincinnati for the Big East, and they lost 45-44.
I was at that game.
You were at that game, and then they went and then the Big East was getting automatic bowl bids at that time. So I think Cincinnati went down to the Orange Bowl to play Virginia Tech, and they were buried.
Yeah, I remember that.
Lucky Pitt lost that game.
I remember. Oh yeah, late in the game, a field goal would have clinched the game.
Yeah,
and I remember that one as Dion Lewis. Instead of just taking a knee in the center, it wasn't his fault. I mean, but to me that was a coaching decision. They should have told him that. But had they taken a knee, he would have run the clock down, kicked the field goal because Cincinnati had only 1 or 2 timeouts left, and that would have been the game there. That would have been it. And but
the two worst college decisions I think I've ever seen was one years ago when Penn State was playing Florida State in a bowl game. It was a Gator Bowl. I'm not sure, but
it was the orange. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, Penn State. Florida State went to 4th and 1 on their own 17 or something like that, and they missed and turned the whole game around. And the other was when the genius Lou Saban sent his kicker in to kick a 50-yard field goal against Auburn that was run back for a touchdown.
Yeah. No, I certainly remember that. That
was anytime they can lose a game, it's a big deal.
Absolutely. But well, listen, Al, I hope you enjoy. I hope you
too. So, are you a season ticket holder there at Pitt?
I am a season ticket holder for years there.
Wow.
Certainly have enjoyed Pitt football since my first game against Northwestern in 1971, which wasn't a good experience, but
you must know Bob Jeffrey then. You must know Bob Jeffrey.
I talked to him online. Yeah, he's a good guy. Talked to him online quite a bit.
I'm in his group, the Pitt Football Talk Group.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good group. Good group.
All right.
All right, Al.
Okay, thank you very, very much. And again, I'm enjoying your by the numbers and the 50 Greatest Pirates and the all of the books I have of yours that that are great.
Well, thank you. We got a couple new ones coming out. We got the Penguin 50 Greatest Games that'll be out in a couple weeks, September 15th. And my personal favorite, and I think we can certainly have a good discussion. I'll get this one to you as soon as I get it. Called Pittsburgh's Greatest Teams, that rates the top 50 teams in Pittsburgh history. I'm sure a lot of them you'll have some fond memories of.
Oh yeah. Anyway, enjoyed this very much, and I'll let Ralph know right after I get off. I'll message him that we finished this, and hopefully it'll be up before the game. I'll try to insist that he put it up before the game because he's been putting them up Sundays.
That's okay. So we'll get that, and hopefully we'll have it up there, and you enjoy the game. And I'm hoping when next we talk, we can talk about a nice Pitt win.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to say I want to thank David Finoli for appearing on this show again. We're becoming a regular and staple of the Comfortably Zone Radio Network, and from what I understand, we're being very well received. So basically, this is Alan Blumkin for David Finoli signing off and say, saying thank you very much. Same bad time, same bad channel next week. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bud. Bye.